in a couple minutes here. You've joined the Training Tuesday National Fire Desk webinar. This is Isaiah Hirschfield. Thank you all for joining us here. I'm going to go ahead and launch in. I got 2 o'clock my time out on the East Coast, and we'll go ahead and do a little introductory stuff, a little bit of little outline of what we're looking to get accomplished here today, and go from there, and then jump into it. So first of all, thanks to James Silverstone and Eastern Area for helping coordinate the Adobe Connect and the conference call line as well. A couple items of housekeeping. If folks want to participate via the chat function in Adobe Connect, feel free. I'm going to have James help me if there are some questions there to jump in and help facilitate that. As just a general rule, I'm planning to talk through the presentation for about 20 minutes or so is what I'm aiming for, and then leave another 10 minutes afterwards for any questions or any conversation that might come up. But if you want to jump in and ask questions or clarifications during the presentation, I'm comfortable with that also. Another thing just to be aware of, we're planning to record this module here and make it available for posting at a later date, and that James has offered after the meeting to provide information as to where and when that's going to be posted. Also, too, I've got another document along with the presentation that we'll make available. I've got another document that's just a basic, hey, what is the fire desk? So if folks want to refer to that at a later time, or for anybody that's accessing this information, not live here, but at a later date, those should all be bundled together and accessible as well. And James will provide that information when we're done here. So let's see. So welcome to one of the Training Tuesdays here. So there's a module that fits in the context of the National Intel Subcommittee and its participants. And I think it's going to be a good piece that we're building as far as a group of modules that are useful to the Intel group as a whole. So let me just say a little bit about who I am. Isaiah Hirschfield. I've been the National Fire Desk Manager since the fall of 2016 here. And I've got about 16, 17 years in fire management. And my most recent position was not national, I was a geographic area Intel coordinator out of the Northwest, and did that for 7 years. So I come from that Intel background, and most recently, before coming to here, it's the fire desk. So a couple things I wanted to cover and just help folks get some idea of what the fire desk is. It's one of these kind of esoteric positions, one of these esoteric offices within the fire management community. And I think there's a little bit of either folks just don't know that it exists or what we do, and there's also a little bit of confusion with how we interact with some of our other partners and groups like National Interagency Fire Center or some of the other watch desks. So I wanted to help clear some of that up. And also, when we're done here, just talk about some of the opportunities that exist for the Intell group potentially to help us here at the fire desk, and just how we relate together. So I'm going to cover a little bit of basics, what we do at the desk, how we interact with the Intell community, and then just a few observations, a little bit of kind of a philosophical review of where we're at as an Intell community, and here from this perspective now at the fire desk. So with that, just a couple of things just for your awareness on that opening slide. That building that you see is the Sidney Yates Federal Building. That's where the Forest Service Washington office is, right next to the Washington Monument. So that's where we sit physically. Moving ahead here on the slide here. Hang on just a moment. There we go. All right, so a little bit of background in basics, just a little bit how we're organized. So the National Fire Desk here it's a Forest Service, part of the Forest Service organization. We work for the Fire and Aviation Management office here in the Forest Service, and so we've got a couple of, well, let me just talk about our audience too. You know, we primarily serve Forest Service leadership and the USDA, the Department of Agriculture leadership. Physically, their building here in DC is across the street from us, and the Forest Service gets their marching orders from Department of Agriculture. So those are our main audiences and who we get our marching orders from. But ultimately, like those of you that work in Intell, that work in the fire organization, you know that it's an interagency environment just by its nature. And so that's my perspective on, you know, how we operate in terms of the information that we move in, and really our broader responsibilities are part of that interagency, you know, wildland fire community. A couple things just about how we staff. Right now we've got 2 permanent full-time members here at the fire desk. So we're a year-round operation, and as activity ramps up, typically around the western fire season, we'll bring in other folks on fire assignment. And typically at maximum we've got 4 people here in the office, and depending on the activity, you know, looking at last year, which was a real active year as an example, you know, we had all 4 of our desks staffed from, you know, June through September, and then we kind of tail in and out on the shoulder season. So that's a kind of a typical staffing picture. We are not a 24-hour operations center. We do go to 7-day once things get busy, but ultimately, you know, a lot of our work is driven a little bit more, you know, by the standard work week, just because of the nature of what we do, and a little less so just on fire, you know, fire activity throughout the nation. So something to be aware of. In terms of who we work with, we do work closely with NIFC and the NIC Intell desk, so at the National Interagency Coordination Center in Boise. We share a lot of information, particularly with the NIC Intell group and their public affairs shop. One of the things that we try and do is speak with the same voice, and so we're trying to use the same data sets. If we get information requests that might hit both of us for some reason, we want to be using that, you know, the same voice and using the same, having the same responses. So we also work with Forest Service regions as well, and some of our other interagency partners, some of our other watch desks, and some of our other operations centers, since you know, we're all tending to work with the same information sets. So And one thing that we do try and do as a general rule here from the fire desk is limit our contact, limit our direct contact with incidents, generally at the GACs for that matter. So those of you at Geographic Area Coordination Centers, it's occasionally you might hear from us for a clarification on an incident event or that type of thing. But generally speaking, we're trying to not have an impact on the field, as it were, and try and get our information from all of the different reporting sources and work with Boise and Nick primarily. Occasionally, when we have an incident of national significance, we'll tie in, most often with the public affairs folks on those incidents, just to be getting close updates as much as we can. So that's really the kind of the basics in a nutshell, of what we do in terms of structure. So let's talk a little bit about specifically the fire desk and the Intell community as far as the wildland fire Intell community goes. Now we got some things that we do that are pretty similar and some things that we do that are different. But here's one of the main things that I'm hoping folks that are on the call get from this discussion, because these are things that cross, intersect with the Intell community at the national level, geographic area level, local level, here at the fire desk, public affairs folks, all those communities. So, the top bullet point that you see on the screen is that we need the big interagency picture. So like I mentioned earlier at the top that, we get our marching orders here from from Forest Service, in particular. But the bottom line is it doesn't matter the specifics in that case. We always need to know what's happening nationally and figure out, where this agency may fit in the context of everybody else. So, that being the case, we're relying on the same information systems for better or worse, out there in the field, how some of them have their strengths and weaknesses. We're also consumers of those same, the same information products, and same reporting systems. So some of the little screen grabs you see on that slide there, drought information, fire danger ratings, what we call the Enterprise Geospatial Portal, so a web-based mapping portal or InsuWeb. Any of those are the systems that we're relying on, just like everybody else, and the folks in the Intell community are helping the accuracy and helping folks facilitate inputting and using all these products. So the other thing we spend a lot of time doing here is figuring out how to use all that information and make are working with at any given time. So one thing I'll add to that I didn't mention that we do here, and in fact it rolls into the next slide here, but about what some of the differences are. We do engage. We're not specifically a public affairs desk here, but we engage. We have public affairs specialists here at the Washington office who we support them, and there's also a branch and Office of Communications here, and so we're working with those folks a lot and also getting a lot of information from folks in the field who come with that public affairs background. So a couple of the differences, unlike the majority of our wildland firefighting community is focused on the West, being here in DC and on Eastern Time, a lot of our reporting schedule and a lot of our needs are driven by the morning operation here on the East Coast. So for those of you that have to, are engaged with us in one way or another, just a point of awareness. Those of you in Southern area and Eastern area are our Eastern time zone brethren. We appreciate you being out here with us. But so it's just something we have to work around here, and just an awareness for folks in the who work with us that's how things operate for us here. The other thing too, I mentioned lots of non-fire people. That's one thing that took me some adjustment. coming from a geographic area where we would brief primarily to people in the fire world. And here we have a lot of folks that come through, either read our products or who we speak to on the phone or provide information to who are not fire people. So number one, we've got a lot of, we have a fair amount of work to do to not use lingo and to explain some of our misperceptions that are out there in the everyday world. So something to be aware of. The other thing that's different here is, we're less driven just by operational workload, but when we have activity related to the budget, Congress, hearings, any of those things, that can drive our workload here. So it's not always just with the peaks and valleys of fire season, but it's sometimes, a little bit of a different rhythm. All right, so here's a little bit more of the philosophical part that I wanted to share with folks. As I spent, last year being a real busy year here at the fire desk, nationally I should say, but also that translated into busyness at the fire desk. And also we had a lot of transitions, administratively from the White House to cabinet positions to, a new Secretary of Agriculture, a relatively new Chief of the Forest Service, I should say a relatively new Director of Fire and Aviation, and then we had transitions and have transitions now with the Chief of the Forest Service. So there were a lot of moving parts. But just thinking about the intelligence community and the communications community, one of the things we do well, we're really pretty good at capturing fire situations. So, what's happening on the ground? How many fires do we have? Where are they? What's the size? We're pretty good at that. The resource availability picture is still a struggle for us. So I know we have a lot of systems between Ross and some of our other reporting mechanisms in the 209, but we just don't have, we're not quite there yet in terms of just efficiently at all scales being able to say not just what's at the incident level, but what do we have in a given state, region, nationally. So that's just one of the struggles we see here as well. That second bullet point, we spend a lot of energy compiling and re-entering and reformatting information. We're getting better at it. Some of the processes we've got, Irwin is one that comes to mind that's really helped with some redundancy. We're getting better, but we still spend a lot of our energy doing that as opposed to analyzing and producing and sharing information, which is one of the things that, ultimately I feel like is the gold standard that should be our, our vision as the Intel community and the communications community as we go forward. The other thing you'll see too is we see this a lot, but we try and traffic in official information as best as possible, especially at this level. And information that might come out that's verified and validated is a lot of times a lot slower than what you see coming out from other sources. And that's just a battle that we've got. It's just gotten more acute over, in the social media era. I don't necessarily have all the solutions, but it's just something that I think we need to accept as part of the current climate, and be good also be disciplined about not, just pushing out the first bit of information that we see, even if it's, been, tweeted or repeated a lot of times, but actually still being, I guess, sort of journalistic in that way and verifying what we've got. A couple other points, just as far as that sort of philosophical observations. The community that we work in is, and fire response is actually pretty complicated if you're trying to put it in simple terms for folks between some of the terms, if you've got the PowerPoint up in front of you, between that I put up there, ownership, protection, jurisdiction, threat, response, host, agency, all those kinds of terms, are challenging even within the fire community to make sure we're using them correctly. But, I mentioned that we got our outside audiences, so we spend a lot of time just trying to clarify. When folks say, hey, how many fires did we have last year? You just kind of got to start with the, well, who's the we, and start from the big picture and drill down. So, that's just one of our challenges and responsibilities. And then the next one is, this, what I call this storytelling challenge that, managing fire it's complicated. It's a lot of things. And I think the further out you get, I say it's not just smoke jumpers, hot shots, and VLAT drops. We tend to focus on that sort of visual picture of, of the aggressive go-getter fire, the one that, big flames that make the news, as well as, battling the Smokey Bear message. And so we got a lot of work to do to try and talk about all that complexity when it comes to, hazard fuels, how we manage fires, multiple objectives and strategies on fires. So that's a work in progress. That's, for all of us to be working towards. All right, so that lands me just at about 20 minutes through those slides, which is what I was hoping to land on. At this point, if folks have any questions about any of the things we talked about, I'm happy to take questions. If anybody, I don't think we've had anything popping in on the chat line as far as I can tell, but if there's anything that folks wanted to contribute there, I'm open to suggestions. Anybody care to jump in? Okay, James, just checking in with you. Was there any, I didn't think I saw any other input from chat lines. I don't know if you saw anything
I didn't.
there.
I've been monitoring. I didn't see any.
Okay.
Oh, we're getting one. Hang on.
Okay, I can see that up there on the screen. What sort of coordination do you do with other agencies? So it's a good question. The some of the reporting that we do, we share out to our other, primarily federal agencies, the other land management agencies, and so they're aware of the what are the incidents of particular interest for us. Once we hit preparedness, national preparedness level 2, our office starts putting out a regular incident update report, which is, it's sort of similar in some ways to the national SIT report, the Incident Management Situation Report, but with a little bit more of a focus of fires of interest specific to the Forest Service. So we share that out to our partners so they know, what we're focusing on. And also, too, we receive their reports as well. So we're getting information from, the Department of the Interior has a watch desk as well, and they do something similar to what we do, but with more of a focus on DOI incidents and events. So we're aware of each other's, what each of us are doing here. The other thing, too, there's a little bit more engagement here, as you might imagine, with FEMA, and particularly because the Forest Service is tasked with the function of what they call ESF4, the Emergency Support Function number 4, which is firefighting. So when there are requests for, say, maybe hurricane support or that type of thing, but with resources that come from our, our national wildland fire community, those get routed through the Forest Service. So there's a fair amount of coordination with FEMA, particularly with when it comes to that ESF4 function. Thanks for the question. Any other questions from folks on the phone or the chat environment?
Hey, Isaiah.
Yep.
Typically, how many? I know you hired some staff, I believe you said, but on the average, how many detailers do you usually have in say a western fire season? Or
Oh, yeah. Well, actually, thanks for helping me circle back to that, because this was the landing slide, and I have that fire assignment opportunities there and said I was going to talk about it. So right now, it's actually fairly limited opportunities right now this year, just because we've reconfigured a little bit. But what we do right now, we've got, we'll probably have our 2 permanent desks filled, and then another 1 or 2 positions that would have folks coming in as a rolling opportunity. In past years, we've had, last year we actually had, I would say it was roughly 25 individuals when you took into account all of the assignments that came through. This year, I would just expect, because of the arrangement, it's probably about going to be, in the neighborhood of 8 to 10 individuals. And this year, we departed a little bit from what we typically do. In the past, we've sent out an outreach nationwide that comes out from the fire desk announcing opportunities for those assignments at the fire desk. This year, because we figured it was going to be a much more limited opportunity, we didn't put that outreach out. But depending on how the season goes and how staffing goes, that might change. So for folks that are interested, since we didn't do an outreach this year, what I'd recommend is just reach out to me with the contact information that you see up on the screen directly to the fire desk at fs.fed.us. And so folks that haven't come out in the past, we can have some discussion for having that opportunity. Primarily just so people know the skill set that serves us best out here is a combination, ideally, of Intell gathering background and some sort of public relations or communications type background. Most folks don't have both of those things typically, so we rely on a little bit of a mix and match of how we staff in here just to make sure we've got those skill sets. So in general, we'll bring in people that have done Intell like we did last year. We brought in quite a few of folks from the Intell community at the geographic area level. And we also had quite a few people that have public information backgrounds. So in general, that's what we're looking for. Those are our strongest candidates. And this year might be a little bit tough just to bring new people into the fold, but I definitely encourage people to contact us here at the fire desk and to see if the opportunities come up, because sometimes it's just a matter of scheduling and timing, as you all know, when it comes to fire assignments. And then also, too, typically we're doing, a 2-week fire assignment, sort of following the conventional fire assignments, and we have people come out on a resource order like any other fire assignment. James, thanks for mentioning that. Any other questions from folks out there? All right. We'll hold it open for a few more seconds as I wrap up. But meanwhile, just to let folks know, once again, I appreciate you joining in and appreciate this opportunity to share what the fire desk does. And hopefully this presentation and some of the materials will be useful to folks just to access at a future date. And if you have questions about the fire desk, if you have questions about opportunities, feel free to contact me directly. And if you direct any emails to that fire desk at fs.fed.us, that will get to both me and the staff that are here. So if I'm unavailable, we've got other folks that can respond as well. And with that, let's see, I see one more question. Is there one Intell product that is most useful to you? Good question. I mean, I think we do, like a lot of folks, we rely heavily on the national SIT report, but mostly just to make sure we're in some alignment with the Intell group. But really, it's more, It's situational dependent, so we'll go to specific GACs if we are looking for a specific, say, predictive services products about an event that's coming in, and we're trying to get a sense of fuels and fire danger. And also, we're starting to rely now, on, just on Irwin as, one of our core systems that we refer to. So, as you know, if we're relying on Irwin, we're basically, we're relying on kind of the web of that interconnected world of the various fire reporting tools that are out there. So it's really, if there's one Intell product, it's sort of like the Lord of the Rings version of, one product to rule them all. So that's kind of where we've been leaning more heavily lately. It's a good question. Thank you. Any other questions out there? Well, with that, I'm looking at half an hour. As a good firefighting community, I like to try and stay on our schedule if we can. So with that, James, any other questions or last-minute items or anything you'd want to throw out there?
Yes, our Training Tuesday webinar, Intell Training Tuesday webinar, and handouts. We are creating a space for it on the Intelligence Subcommittee page, which is under the NWCG page. But there's a delay because I have to caption these webinars. And right now, this is the second. So we're trying to do at least one webinar a month. So that's all I have. Thanks for participating, everybody.
Okay, thank you all. All right, thanks, James, and thanks, everybody out there. And have a safe season, and look forward to working with you all when we have the opportunity. Take care.